It's not going to move the needle, yes.
That's right. Doesn't move the needle. Okay. So they're going to push that. Now, in addition, there's a resource on Mars, namely deuterium. Okay. Heavy hydrogen. It's 5 times as common on Mars as it is on Earth. If you could develop fusion reactors, that becomes energy. As much energy in 1 liter of water as in 350 liters of gasoline. Think about that.
Sorry, say it again. I couldn't even grasp the number.
If you take 1 liter of water, okay, any water, fresh or salt, on Earth, that contains as much energy as there is in 350 gallons of gasoline if you could use the deuterium in it. Now on Mars, wait for it, it's more like 1,700 liters of gasoline in a liter of Martian water. Okay? But what you've got to have is a fusion reactor. Now, there are people working on fusion reactors on Earth. But you see, on Earth, look, you got fossil fuels lying around that you don't have to make. They're there. And the oxygen to burn them is there. And that's why fossil fueled energy is so cheap. Okay? It's just already there. On Mars, you're going to have to make your energy. On Mars, there's a much stronger incentive to develop advanced nuclear fission and then fusion technologies. So
I think right now on the Earth, there's also a lot of pressure.
Well,
with,
there is
all the
some, but it's
zero carbon economy and,
Yeah, but you know what? It's more talk than reality. I mean, you take the Germans, for example, who will burn your ears off with all their talk about how green they are, right? They use 5 times as much carbon per unit electricity generated as the French do because they refuse to implement nuclear power. So when you get right down to, so they build all these windmills and stuff, but they're for show. The solar panels are for show. Virtue signaling. It's not real. Okay. The real energy, you know where the Germans really get their energy from? It's from coal.
That's true, because all these alternative energy like the solar and the wind, the production level is so low, right? It's not effective. So they still need to heavily rely on the coal.
That's right. The reason is because the fossil fuel energy is so cheap. And at the end of the day, money is what talks.
Yeah,
other stuff is all for politics and it's kind of a religion. But on Mars,
it's different.
There's no fossil fuels on Mars. You could make fossil fuels on Mars, but you've got to supply the energy to do it. And you got to make the oxygen to burn it with. So fossil fuels are not going to be a significant energy source on Mars. Okay? And solar power on Mars is less than half as strong as it is on Earth. So solar energy...
Why?
Because it's further from the sun. So that's not happening. What can happen is nuclear, but you're really going to want to push the nuclear.
Absolutely. I see probably, I can't say that, but I see among all the countries, the Chinese are the ones actually quite spend a lot more effort and building a lot more nuclear.
Well, they are. They are. That's true. Both inside of China and marketing them aggressively into the developing nations. Okay. And so we'll see. How that goes. But yes.
But for sure in Mars, that there is absolutely the motivation because economic wise, the fossil fuel just doesn't make a lot of sense. So to conclude that, what we was just talking about this topic on the scientific goal, from your perspective, that would be the biotech, that were really helping us to, once we get to Mars and the Mars settlement, we will find the different form of life that we will actually be able to much broaden our imagination and thinking what is possible and bring, much better new ideas to the biotechnology.
Yes.
And also the nuclear energy, which is right now not really efficient to use on Earth, and a lot of countries
it's not
limiting belief.
Let me put it this way. We can get by without it, so we do. For certain applications like naval propulsion, you can't beat it. Okay? And so, the Navy doesn't listen to any of these anti-nukes. They say, go away. We want nuclear submarines because they can travel around the world underwater, and you can't do that with a fossil fuel electric submarine. And you know what? They say, The anti-nukes blocked us from establishing a nuclear waste storage facility under a mountain in the desert in Nevada, coming up with all kinds of silly arguments so that the commercial plants have to keep their nuclear waste near the plant, near cities, instead of putting it in the desert. But guess what? The Navy stores its nuclear waste in salt caverns in New Mexico. They're just saying, sorry, we're serious. We're going to do this. We're not going to store the nuclear waste on a Navy base. We're going to store it in a salt cavern deep underground in New Mexico. Now go away. That's the difference. The Navy needs nuclear power, and so they don't listen to these stupid arguments against it. The civilian nuclear power, yes, it works, but you can also generate electricity by burning coal or natural gas.
Got you. It's really based on necessity.
Yes.
Otherwise, people will just go for the easiest solution.
That's right.
And we can also see that doesn't matter it's a biotech or it's nuclear tech. It's always come with a lot of social discussion and, people, so afraid that, anything to do with the biotech. I mean, obviously, bring the better, live longer. That's one thing. But if it's a genetic change, the, crops or agriculture product, people seems like so nervous about it.
But it's a nonsensical argument because guess what? All life is genetically modified. That is what we learned from the theory of evolution. All the life forms that we have on Earth are different from the life forms that were here 1 million years ago, which were different from the life forms that were there 10 million years before that, and so forth. Okay, the only difference is that the genetic modifications have been done randomly. And guess what? There's nothing in nature that guarantees that genetic modified foods that are randomly happening make them safer. In fact, it's to the benefit of a plant if its fruit is poisonous. 200 years ago in America, you could actually make a lot of money by gathering a crowd and offering to eat a tomato in front of everyone. Because people thought they were poisonous. Everybody put $1 in the hat and I'll eat this tomato.
Well, it could go wrong, but luckily it didn't. So that's where we go with the tomato. Okay.
Right.
Well, this is really, really interesting discussion. I think we can go for hours.
Right.
But,
Okay.
Okay. I still have a long list of questions, so we better move it on. So next part, I would love to talk about the space mining. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that is a topic we have before also exchanged our views, because there is so much debate on the legality of the space mining and resource extraction. What would be your view on the legal and regulatory framework for space mining?
Okay.
And how do you see that evolving?
Okay. We need to have a system that allows some form of property claims to be made in space. Okay? If you cannot claim property, the property will never be developed. While we're not ready to mine asteroids right now, we are ready scientifically and technically to explore them to try to find the ones that have the most precious metals. But no one is going to do that unless they can get a mining claim in return for making the discovery. Now, we have this on Earth. There are people who do not drill for oil themselves or mine gold themselves. They just explore for it, and they find it, and they make a claim, and then they sell the claim to an oil company or a mining company, and so forth. And that's how a lot of exploration gets done. Okay, without those people, we wouldn't find these resources, okay? But if they weren't able to make a claim, they wouldn't do it, okay? Now, and that means, and they're not robbing us by making that claim, they're giving us oil. The oil that you use, you wouldn't have if there weren't people finding it and then drilling it. Okay. Yeah,
I agree, because they actually did the work on exploration.
Right.
So in a way, they should be compensated. So
right.
enable others
right.
to
right.
continue the work.
But
that is against the Outer Space Treaty, right? Which is say that you can have
the Outer Space
no
Treaty
ownership.
Creates difficulties. That is quite true. But I believe there's ways around this. And the type of law that I would follow is analogous to patent law. Okay. Now, if I make an invention, and I am an inventor and I've made some inventions, and then I go and I patent them at the U.S. Patent Office, there's a couple of things about that. And this system was devised by Alexander Hamilton way back near the beginning of the United States. First of all, I have to disclose to the patent office how to make the invention. So it can't be secret knowledge. It's going to be public knowledge published by the patent office. But I get the exclusive right to use that invention for 18 years. After that, anyone can use it. So this system encourages people to spend their time working on inventions. And then they've got 18 years to get exclusive profit from it. And then after that, it's available to everyone. Now, actually, you want to know, it benefits everyone even while only one person is making it. Because if it's a better way to make some product, if it's a way to make some product cheaper than it's currently being made, then it benefits the world that there's somebody making that product cheaper than what they have to pay for it now. Okay? Now, furthermore, however, it's meant to be a temporary monopoly. Okay, so you have your chance to get your payback, and you can either get the payback or not, but after that, the knowledge is for everyone. That's how the patent law works. Now,
yeah, and also the people who invent it, they may be able to sell their patent to a big company that to be able to commercialize scaling it, right?
Exactly.
So,
because, for instance, you take someone like me, okay, I don't have the facilities to mass produce the products that I have invented. So, yes, I'm like the oil explorer or the gold explorer, the prospector, who isn't going to actually mine the gold. He's just going to discover where it is, stake a claim, and then sell that claim off to Freeport McMoran, okay, or someone like that. Okay, fine. There it is. Everybody wins. And
so the same thing for space mining.
Right.
That's in your view that we should have almost...
Right. Now think about this for a minute. The U.S. Patent Office doesn't just benefit Americans. It benefits inventors all over the world. Because let's say you come from a small country like Finland and you invent something. Well, you could go get a Finnish patent, but who would care? If they want to sell your invention in Finland, they got to come to you. So, okay, we're not going to go to you. We'll just forget about Finland. But you, as a Finnish inventor, can go to the U.S. Patent Office and get an American patent that covers the United States, which is 25% of the world market. And that's big enough that if somebody wants to make that product, they're going to come knocking on your door and say, hey, let's make a deal. So there you go. So inventors from any country benefits from the U.S. Patent Office. Now, we need a similar thing for asteroid mining. And the way it would work is, if you go and explore an asteroid to some specified degree of detail, and then you have to publish that data so everybody has it, but it means that you have the exclusive right to mine that asteroid for the next period of time. Now, I would make it more than 18 years in this case. I'd make it 99 years. And now, in general, the kind of people who are going to mount these exploration missions are not the people who are going to do the mining. They're going to look for someone to sell that claim to. Okay? But that's fine, because once someone knows where it is, and then they've bought the claim, they now have exclusive rights to that. Now, how do you enforce this? We don't need...
And also, what exactly is qualify a discovery, right?
Well, no,
anyone can point...
That's a question of detail, but for instance, I would have it be something like you have photographed the whole asteroid to 1 square centimeter per pixel resolution or something. Okay, so it would be some technical qualification of that general nature that you will have imaged the asteroid to some degree or even gotten a sample back from it. That is open to discussion. But nevertheless, there'd be some basis for making a claim, okay, that is clear, that someone can make it. Now, how do we enforce this? Do we need space patrol going around the asteroid belt looking for miners that are on the wrong asteroid? No. The way you enforce this is with the customs people. Somebody goes and mines the platinum on this asteroid and brings it back. Well, let's say let's start with the example that this is an American patent office. They bring it back. They try to sell it in the United States. They're subject to U.S. law. You can't sell that here unless the patent holder says you can. Okay, what if they sell it in Japan? Well, then the platinum goes into catalytic converters. When the Toyotas come off the ship here, customs people say, that is contraband platinum in your catalytic converter, unless you've made a deal with the inventor, with the prospect. Okay? All right. Now, there might be some other countries that pay no attention. I mean, we have this problem with China ignoring U.S. patents, but they can only sell that stuff inside of the Chinese market. If they try to sell it here, it gets confiscated. So the patent isn't foolproof, but it creates value. Okay? So if I was to then go to some money people and say, look, here's my design for a spacecraft that can explore asteroids. I need your money to fund this mission, okay? And so we can build this spacecraft and go there, and you will get the patents, okay, which you can then sell to someone who looks to mine them. And now this company who funds this would be taking a chance because they don't know if I'm going to discover anything. They don't know if they're going to be able to sell the patents. But at least they'll be able to know that if we do discover something, they will get a patent and they'll be able to try to sell it. Okay? And in other words, it makes that asteroid from a thing into property. Here in America, pioneers went west. In general, these were fairly poor people. Okay, they may have gone west with maybe 10 head of cattle. And if they made it to Oregon or someplace, California, they would then spend the rest of their life breeding this up into a herd of 100 or 200 head of cattle. And then if they succeed in that, they would be rich, right? Well, meantime, they're traveling across the continent inhabited by 60 million bison, buffalo. Okay, and I don't know if you know, but bison is superior meat. A bison, okay, first of all, it has more meat than a cow. It's better meat. The bison is easier to care for. You don't have to put it inside in the wintertime. Took no notice of them. They may have shot a few as they passed them to eat on the way, but they never thought of putting a brand on them and making them their own, because the bison were conceived of not as livestock, but as wildlife. You don't own wildlife. Okay, you do own cattle. And so they were driven practically to extinction. They got rid of them so they could breed cattle to put on the prairie when there already were bison there. Okay, and just think about this. Literally billions of dollars worth of bison were destroyed in order to try to create cattle to replace them. Okay.
Because there is no money to make.
Right. Because they weren't conceived of as something that you could own. To turn something from a thing into property, there has to be a legal mechanism. And then, I mean, do you realize all the houses in the world would be worthless if it was impossible to have a property title to a house? If someone said, you see all those houses out there? They're the common heritage of mankind. No one can own them, okay? Then you live in a house. What's to stop some people with guns from coming in and throwing you out of your house? And what's to stop a few more people with guns from throwing them out of the house? The thing has no value, okay? It has none, okay? So all these houses that you see in the world, however nice they might be, would have zero value if there was no way to own them.
The issue is if it's zero value, no one is going to ever invest into building it, right?
Correct.
And there's nobody is even, there's just no such market to realize the value. And so the entire property market will not be developed, and the same thing for the space mining.
Right.
And if there is no proper claim or patent rights, it will be very, very hard to move this industry faster. So in your view, before you said about enforcement, and you give example of customs and how we regulate that on the Earth. So how exactly a custom idea going to work on space mining?
Well, the same way. Once again, if I have a patent for a certain invention, We don't have to send the FBI all over the world looking for people who are secretly making that invention. It's just if they try to sell the product of that invention inside the United States, they run into U.S. law enforcement. Okay, so we don't need to send the space police all over the asteroid belt looking for people who are mining the asteroid. We just wait, and if they try to sell it inside the United States or any country that has a treaty.
But were they sell in United States? That's the issue, right? I mean, they're not going to bring back the space material to the Earth, right?
Well, no, they will. If you want to make money by selling the platinum, you got to bring it back to Earth.
I thought the idea was to utilize the mineral in the space.
Well, in some cases,
or in Mars.
Well, in some cases, you could do that. But for instance, if we're talking about the precious metals of the asteroids, people are most interested in bringing it back for sale on Earth. Okay.
Got you. So basically, if they bring back to the Earth, and then there will be law to govern, and these mineral from which planet, who has discovered,
right.
And then
now I want to throw a new idea into this. The way I originally thought of this was pretty much the way I describe it. We set up an asteroid mining office in Washington, D.C., and we do this, okay? It's hard to move the American political system, so I came up with another idea. What if a small country like Singapore or Luxembourg created such an office and said, look, we're going to operate this mining claims office as a service for the international community. And what we're looking for, countries to agree that they will honor any patent that we issue, okay? And they could even invite countries who signed the treaty to each send a judge to be part of this office. So that if the United States and say in France and Australia all agreed that they would be part of this, they perhaps might send a judge to be part of this office as well. So they'd be they could have some feeling that this was going to be a fair office issuing patents to whoever met the criteria. And then you see, in other words, we could have a bunch of international agreements with this office. And you see, it would benefit everyone that such a mechanism exists. Because until such a mechanism exists, these asteroids are not going to be mined. They're not going to be explored, and they're not going to be mined. And all the wealth that could be there for the human race will not be brought back. Just as, you see, if there was no way to stake a claim for an oil well discovery, no one would have any oil. Okay.
I agree.
All right.
I agree.
So the people who stake those oil claims are not stealing from mankind. They are creating wealth that mankind can use.
I agree. But I think everyone's focus right now is actually how to address the technology issue to actually mine the asteroid. We obviously went a step ahead that actually, we want to create a kind of like a commercial ecosystem for people who explore it and be able to transact it and benefit from it. Do you think actually the current status quo on the technology for mining, for space mining, for astro mining is already ready?
No, not for mining, but for exploring. And but here's the thing. Unless we have the property rights structure, the exploration won't occur. Once the exploration does occur, then people will develop the mining technology.
Even with all these space mining companies out there,
they have no chance of succeeding under the current regime. We need a legal structure that would allow them to stake claims. Without that, the business plan can't work. And we had several high-profile asteroid mining companies created here in the United States, and they failed. Okay, because they couldn't. It just can't work. Imagine if you couldn't copyright music, and you tried to create a company that sold music recordings, but anyone could copy it and sell it instead. As soon as you put it out, everyone else would copy it, and that would be that. In other words, without the legal structure, the business plan can't work. So that's why
I agree with you.
That's why in this case, I put the legal structural issue as being more important than the technical issues. The technical issues will be rapidly solved if the legal structure is there.
And plus the skill for making the music and the skill for distributing the music are quite a different skill for people like you, who is inventor, and the business people to adopt these and make it a production and marketing it, and it's a very, very different skill. So without this legal framework, it would be very, very hard for people is trying, like what you said, to create a business case, but actually you
can't. You say, I'm going to go out and discover gold on asteroids, and they say, well, how do we know that once you discover it that someone else won't mine it? Why should we pay for this exploration? Okay, let's just wait for some other fool to go out and find gold for us, and then we'll go mine it.
I thought NASA and a lot of space agency has already made a lot of discovery about the
but it's not of this kind. They've developed the technology that would allow us to send probes and orbit an asteroid and intensively survey it, but they haven't done that, and there's no reason why they would do it. The work they've done has made it clear that there is wealth there to be found, but once again, unless there's a mechanism for staking the claim, no one is going to. It can't work. There's no way you could sell this business to investors. And if investors were foolish enough to invest, there's no way they would actually make money.
And I think like NASA, they focus on all these very big asteroid belts, which probably is very further away, but there's a lot of nearby asteroids because they're quite small, actually has not been fully explored, right?
Right. Well, in any case, it certainly hasn't been focused on commercial possibilities.
So, in your view, what roles do you see space mining will play in enable the future space exploration and colonization effort, particular for destination like Mars?
Well, if you want to make money off of a gold rush, okay, do you know the best way to do it? It's not to mine gold. It's
to provide the shovel, right?
That's right.
Shovel.
That's right. Sell the shovels, or the most famously selling the blue jeans to the asteroid miners. Okay, because in fact, the Levi Strauss company, which is still around, made its fortune selling blue jeans to California gold miners. And 160 years later, they're still very much in business. And the necessities to support the asteroid mining require a more larger, diverse economy than you're likely to have at the asteroid base itself. And but Mars will have that. So, and it's much easier, about 50 times easier to export to the asteroid belt from Mars than it is from Earth because of its position and because of its lower gravity. Basically, anything that can be made on Mars that's needed in the asteroid belt will be made on Mars, not on Earth. And so you'll have a triangle trade. Mars, will try to be as independent from Earth as it can, but there'll be some high-tech goods it needs to buy from Earth. Okay, but it will sell medium tech goods, if you will, to the asteroid belt, which in turn will sell precious metals to the Earth. That's how this is going to go. What Seattle was to the Yukon, Mars will be to the asteroid belt.
So you actually think that the triangle is Earth will provide some high-tech stuff to Mars, and then Mars to do the production to mine the asteroid, and the asteroid sell that to Earth.
Yes.
Wow. I thought that Mars, this position is a moon. So, there's a lot of discussion about the Earth, moon, and asteroid. It's the first time I hear that asteroid, Mars,
it'd be very difficult to develop any kind of large-scale society on the moon. You'll want to have, towns of, 50,000 people on Mars, which are not big cities by modern standards, but Renaissance Florence was 50,000 people. Renaissance Amsterdam was 50,000 people, where Rembrandt lived. I mean, Philadelphia at the time of the American Revolution was 50,000 people. It's a fair-sized town in which you can have various kinds of industry and an inventive culture and farms. One thing you're not going to have in the asteroid belt are farms. And you're going to make food, and you're going to make clothing, and you're going to make, tools.
They say the minimum number to form a society is like 100 to 150 people, right?
Oh, well, that's from a genetic point of view. If you have a colony that's less than that, it becomes inbred. I think, if you look at ancient cities, which were not as big as modern cities, there's some famous ancient cities that were as small as 10,000 people. Some very important ones that were on the scale of 50,000 people. It's not really until very recently that you had cities of millions of people. Okay. And cities...
So it's totally doable to get 50,000 people into the mass.
Yeah, I do. I think so. I think that is a realistic goal. Also, you see, a city of 1 million people can only exist where you have very extensive long-range transport to bring all the materials that support it from long distances. Okay? In other words, imperial capitals of Rome or maybe, Peking or something could be that size. Most cities could not be that size. You really have to have quite a large hinterland to support a city that big. On the other hand, a town of 50,000 can be supported, with 10 or 20 square miles of farmland in the vicinity. So it's a more realistic goal.
So the conclusion is the space mining in terms of function to the Mars, actually you turn it around. It's more like the Mars create the society base and the production base for us to mine the asteroid.
Yes.
And which serve back to the Earth.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. And what do you think the technology and engineering challenges right now we have to overcome to make space mining viable?
Well,
apart from the legal structure we just discussed.
Well,
technically, yeah.
Okay. Once again, first of all, we have to create settlements on Mars. And all that is required. And then second of all, in terms of the mining of the asteroid, you're going to want technologies to refine the asteroid material at the asteroid, because you can save a great deal of mass by purifying the actual rare earth elements out there, rather than move a whole bunch of low-value material across space and try to refine it here.
Absolutely. But my question is like, to set up the base in Mars, in that chicken egg, they need raw material to build a base in Mars.
Oh, well, no,
there's
raw materials on Mars, for sure.
Okay. So there is no need
No, they don't need the asteroidal material to build on Mars. The asteroid material provides a profitable product to sell on Earth in addition to the IP being developed on Mars. There's two main products that Mars can sell to Earth: IP and asteroidal resources. Now, there's some ancillary things. For instance, I think Martian sports will be extremely entertaining because of the low gravity. So you could film basketball games and things like this on Mars, which people are jumping 3 times as high as they do on Earth, sell the show. Okay, so there are things like that could make some income on the side, I think.
I really like that. You think way ahead. I just wondering what people are going to wear when they play basket in Mars. But that's the details to solve.
Yeah.
On your side, it's getting really late.
Yes.
We literally went through half the question and we are still stick to space mining before we get into space economy. But I think that we probably need to schedule another time for going through space economy. But we went over more than an hour, which is really, really cool. And I felt like there are so many questions we can
and one last
dig
thing
further.
I want to...
Yes, please.
I have a new book that is coming out April 3rd. It's called
Case for Nukes.
The Case for Nukes, that's right. And so it's about nuclear power, fission, fusion, and both on Earth and in space. And so it'll be coming out April 3rd on sale on Amazon and other places like that.
Absolutely. We're going to get a copy. And I know you actually studied PhD in nuclear engineering.
I do.
So this is a topic at your heart.
Yes. Okay.
We cannot wait to read.
All right. Good night, and look forward to the next podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll fix a time with you for the next podcast, and then we can dive into space economy. But thank you so much, Dr. Zubrin.
Thank
really
you.
great to have you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.